Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, your home for Pittsburgh Penguins news and analysis. We begin today's episode on a solemn note due to the passing of legendary Pittsburgh Penguins broadcaster Mike Lange. Mike was a pillar of the Penguins organization and the Pittsburgh community for over 46 years, narrating the careers of some of hockey's biggest stars and all five of the Penguins' Stanley Cup championships. He inspired generations of young broadcasters for decades in Western Pennsylvania and beyond with his unbridled love for the sport of hockey and, of course, his unique and ever-memorable goal calls that will ring through the annals of Penguins history forever. Lange was a Hall of Famer in the booth, but everyone who had the honor of meeting and speaking with him knew that he was a Hall of Fame person away from the mic. We at the Tip of the Ice-Burgh send our heartfelt condolences to Mike's family, his friends, and everyone in the Penguins organization during this very difficult time. Horwat, I'll cede the floor to you for your thoughts on the life and legacy of Penguins broadcaster Mike Lange.
I mean, you just put it perfectly right there. There's not much more I could add to the life, the legacy, to any of it of what he meant to the Pittsburgh Penguins. The words legendary and iconic don't even begin to describe it. Yeah, just an all-around great person, perfect for this team, for this franchise, and has been just as influential in growing the team and adding to its notoriety as the players. You couldn't, between 76 and 2021, for all those years, you couldn't watch a Penguin game without also wondering what the Mike Lange call was at the same time. So, Pittsburgh's been spoiled to have great sports teams, and that also goes with great broadcasters in terms of all three having iconic names that will be remembered forever. And Mike Lange is just another one of them. And, we knew his health wasn't doing well, but it still always hurts it always hurts, and it's always sad to hear these sorts of things. And just hope for the best for the family, the friends, and all the fans. And, it's hard to really sum up anything more than what you already said.
Yeah, I think I speak for both of us when I say we're both here in large part due to Mike Lange. Growing up, listening to him call games, listening to, as we talked about earlier, the iconic goal calls. It was the soundtrack to our childhood and the soundtrack to our fandom for our entire, childhood and developing year lives. And Mike was a huge part of that. And I credit a lot of the reason that I joined this field to Mike Lange. And it's just a sad day to see that he's passed. And obviously you see the outpouring of love from the Pittsburgh Penguins, from Mario Lemieux, from guys like Phil Bourque, who worked with him for so many years, guys like Steve Mears, who learned under him, Josh Getzoff. So, our heart goes out to all of those who were close with Mike because, as everybody has mentioned over the past 12 hours, he was one of a kind person and he was a great human being. So it's tough to follow that up. We will continue our episode talking about a couple of other things pertaining to the Pittsburgh Penguins. But before we get into that, do you have a favorite Mike Langeism? Because obviously he had goal calls for days, but do you have a favorite, and do you want to even attempt to try to emulate that on the podcast?
No, I won't try and do the voice and try and imitate him in any sort of way. I'll just keep it simple and easy and say I have it hanging on the wall behind me. It's the first time I've ever pointed to something on my wall and found it quite quickly. It's a hockey night in Pittsburgh, simple, iconic, and the only way you can kick off any sort of Penguin game in town or out of town or afternoon game, whatever you want to call it. It is just always that one to go to. That one goes along very well with it's a great day for hockey as well. So
yeah,
those two simple things that live on in Penguins lore forever.
I venture to say nobody bookended broadcasts better than Mike Lange. It's a hockey night in Pittsburgh to start things off, and Elvis has just left the building to close things off. But his goal calls were also memorable. I mean, he beats them like a Red and Mule was always one of my favorites. I love call Arnold Slick from Turtle Creek because being from Johnstown, we always drove 22 to get to and from Pittsburgh. And there's a sign that says you're crossing Turtle Creek. So I always think of Mike Lange whenever I'm driving between Johnstown and Pittsburgh. And then to me, the most iconic one, the one that is so out of left field, but yet so perfect, is get in the fast lane, Grandma. The bingo game is ready to roll. So those calls will kind of legitimize and carry on his legacy far past today and far past the next however many years, because Mike Lange was a legend, is a legend, and will always be a legend for the Pittsburgh Penguins organization and the city of Pittsburgh as a whole. Let's go and talk a little bit about our Pens poll from this week, which we usually don't revisit a Pens poll, but considering the week, considering the game that's about to happen later tonight, considering how much closer this poll has gotten over the last 48 hours, we figured we got to bring this back up. We asked on Monday, after the Team Canada game, once the championship was set, Canada, United States, Four Nations Championship, we said, who will win the Four Nations Face-Off Championship? Well, as of right now, Horwat, it is 51-49 in favor of the US of A. So barely our listenership says USA takes the cake, knocks down Sidney Crosby, and prevents him from getting his 6th gold medal with Team Canada. Are you holding strong to that Canada prediction that you made on Tuesday? Or do you shift a little bit and saying, you know what? I think the United States is going to win. Just to set the record straight before you answer, we both want United States to win. Sorry, Crosby, but we both want the U.S. to win. Obviously, you're wearing the USA sweater. I'm wearing blue. I don't wear much other than regular T-shirts, so this is as close as you're going to get. But do you stick true to what you said on Tuesday, thinking that Canada is going to win this game?
I do think so. Like I said, you're getting Connor McDavid in this situation. You're getting Sidney Crosby in the do or die situation. You're getting a lineup of guys that are going to be hungry for revenge after last game. They're going to be hungry to prove they are still the hockey superpower. I was trying to pull up the money line on this and the betting odds. It's dead even, man. This game could go either way. It's going to be a fascinating contest on both sides of the ice for both teams. The plot continues to grow thicker for both teams when it comes to injury replacements. All of a sudden, Quinn Hughes is not medically cleared. So they've tabbed Tage Thompson and don't tell me, I'm forgetting Brett Pesce as the possible potential replacements. Again, possible potential, unlikely, but with a sickness and an illness going around again, all of a sudden, who knows who's going to be in the lineup truthfully until puck drop, because this tournament has been wild in every way, shape, and form. It's only going to get more interesting tonight, and this has got to be the most highly anticipated hockey game in you could say Game 7 last year, but this is broken through.
This is broken through to like national everyday people that don't typically watch the sport are excited, not just saying, I'm gonna tune in because nothing else is on, but are excited to see what happens at TD Garden tonight. I'm with you there. If I'm putting my money on someone in a do or die situation, I'm putting my money on Sidney Crosby. I mean, the guy has 5 gold medals, twice in the Olympics, 1 in the World Cup, 1 in World Juniors, and 1 in the World Championships. He's won 5 of 7 tournaments that he's played internationally in his lifetime. And the 2 that he lost were back in 2004 and 2006. He lost a World Juniors and he lost a World Championships. On these stages, Sidney Crosby doesn't miss. And it's hard for me to bet against that, even though when we talked on Tuesday, I said the one thing that I want to know is who's all going to play for Team USA. Well, it seems like everybody but Charlie McAvoy is likely in the lineup for Team USA, which makes it was already close. Now it's razor thin. I said 4-3 on Tuesday in favor of Canada. I think I'm going to stick to it. I got to stick to what I said on Tuesday. I'll say 4-3 in favor of Canada. And a nice little nugget yesterday in The Athletic by Chris Johnston when he had that story about Sidney Crosby. This is an all-new Team Canada for Crosby. I didn't think about that until I saw that in that story, which is a fantastic story about Sidney Crosby. I suggest you read it if you're subscribed to The Athletic. But the only teammates that he's had before on this team are Drew Doughty and Brad Marchand. That's insane to me. Of course, we had the 10-year layover, and you'd have to imagine there'd be a lot of turnover in that time. But only 2 players on Team Canada, that's insane to me. But I am going to stick with Canada in this one.
Yeah, don't quote me on this, but I think Alex Pietrangelo would have been another one.
Yeah, I think he played in that 16 World Cup.
Yeah, that's Tyler Seguin would have been another one, but he's injured.
Matt Duchene would have been another one.
Matt Duchene. Yeah. So there could have been a couple other names, but I'm just trying to think of like possibilities. But even if you dug into, I think it was TSN or Sportsnet, one of the two Canadian broadcasts did a whole second team of players not selected to Team Canada, and it would have been just as good almost of a lineup. And I think even a lot of them wouldn't have played with Crosby on the international stage before. So yeah, I mean that 10-year layoff, did a lot. I mean, we discussed already the power that Team North America had. Back in that tournament. I mean, a lot of those guys are now on Team Canada or Team USA, but that was a big reason why this is a whole new team for Sid. And it's fascinating. It's what we've all kind of wanted to see. We've all been waiting to see Sidney Crosby share a jersey with Connor McDavid, with Nathan McKinnon. You can throw Mitch Marner in there. The lineup is, except for the goaltending, the lineup is from top to bottom stacked. And there may have been some choices that were questionable in certain areas, but at the end of the day, it's Team Canada, it's hockey. It's hard to bet against that. And it's hard to bet against Team Canada and hockey, even without some of those names. It's Canada and hockey. There's just nothing, bread and butter.
I will warn first-time watchers tonight, although if you're a first-time watcher, I highly doubt you're listening to this podcast. But if you're a first-time watcher tonight, I wouldn't expect as many fireworks as you got in that game last Saturday. It's similar to a Game 7. The NHL playoffs are the craziest, most physical sporting events that you're going to watch. But if you get to a Game 7, it doesn't tend to be that way. You're probably not going to see fights. If you do, I mean, I'll come on here and say I was wrong, but I would say it's more likely that there is not fights because everything's on the line in this one. A lot of times that ends up being, tight checking, low scoring hockey. And I think there's a likelihood that ends up happening tonight. But you mentioned teammates. I mean, a lot of people are saying Team Canada could have used Tom Wilson. I think tonight that's going to be kind of a moot point based on what I said. But hey, if you wanted another teammate for Crosby, it's not like Sam Montembeault was doing anything. You could have given the nod to Marc-Andre Fleury as your third string that doesn't play any games.
That was one of the names that I would say. Fleury as a third string on this team, just to be on the team, to be part of his last run, to be part of the farewell tour for him. Knowing who Team Canada is, again, probably entered this tournament as a favorite. Yeah, Fleury, we're going to bring you on. You'll be third string. You'll get a medal. I mean, really, what more can you do? It's what he did for the Olympics.
That's how he got both of his other medals.
Yeah, so just being part of the team. And even if push came to shove, I mean, I think you trust Fleury in a tournament like this, right? It's short term. It's not like
as much as you're trusting Jordan Bennington right now.
Exactly. It's not like you're sitting through a 7-game series 4 times over. They played 4 games. And they played 3 round robin and then a championship game. 2 of the teams didn't even play 4 games. So I think you can trust Fleury in that short sample size, especially since he's playing well. We don't need to get into the Tom Wilson thing because, absolutely. I thought they were going to put him on the lineup in the first place. Yeah. Because of the short-term tournament, it played well to what he brings, which is that big body, big, useful checking. He will fight if he needs to, but also is good at offense. He can score. I thought he was a perfect piece for the team, and after the USA game, definitely could have been.
Yeah, nuclear deterrents are impactful in these types of games.
Yeah,
so that's exactly.
And I don't need to dig into the Logan Thompson thing any further. So
we've mentioned that a couple of times here since this tournament began, but it'll culminate tonight in that matchup. United States, Canada, set to start at 8:00 on ESPN and all of its other places that you can watch games thanks to ESPN because they put it everywhere. But it's probably going to start at 8:15. Just a heads up for those who think it'll start whenever it's supposed to. That's just never how it works with nationally televised hockey games. Let's talk a little bit about the Pittsburgh Penguins because after today, they're back in action on Saturday against the Washington Capitals with Tom Wilson. They returned to practice earlier this week, and Evgeni Malkin said, I have something to say. Next season for Evgeni Malkin is going to be year 20 in the National Hockey League. It'll be his 4th and final year of his current contract, and many have speculated, us included, that that's it, that Evgeni Malkin is done after next year. Evgeni Malkin himself doesn't quite like the speculation about his future. Malkin told Rob Rossi of The Athletic earlier this week, quote, I'm not retiring. I know what some people say, that I go back to Russia and play for my home team, but I never said that. I retire with Pittsburgh. The Penguins are my team. I love this team. When I retire, it's here. I'm not going to play in Russia after Pittsburgh. Maybe one game for the home team in Russia, just one, to say goodbye. You got to love Evgeni Malkin for a large portion of that quote saying, this is it. I'm playing here. I'm not going to Russia. Well, maybe one game. Let's not close the door on that completely, but maybe one game just to say goodbye to Magnitogorsk over in Russia.
I didn't listen to or hear the full quote or see the full quote, and that is just the most Malkin quote of all time. Just, no, don't worry, I'm staying here. I'm gonna go play a game, maybe a season.
One game.
He's gonna play a season over there. Let's just be real. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. I don't think anyone's gonna begrudge a Russian player for wanting to play a season in Russia because he hasn't done that since he was a child.
Mm-hmm. Well, the lockout in 2012, but pretty much he was still a child.
Oh, yeah. Well. But, yeah, I don't think anyone's going to begrudge him for that, but also at the same time, it's nice hearing the commitment to Pittsburgh, the commitment to the Penguins. Not that we needed to hear it. We kind of already knew it, at least me and you. And I mean, for what it's worth, I'm not gonna ask that he plays another season after next, but it's up to him. Like he's one of those players that it is totally up to him. If he wants to continue playing with this team, take a small contract, but by all means, we'll have you around as a depth center, as a depth forward. I mean, again, those are discussions of the skill discussions can be had at a later date, but the commitment to the team for one of the all-time greatest, for a no doubt Hall of Famer, and for one of the best in franchise history. That's a good little bit to hear that his commitment is and always has been to the city of Pittsburgh and the Penguins, and we've been hearing it from him for years. He's more vocal about it than any of the three.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, if you had to guess, you kind of leaned towards your thought process here in your answer there, but do you think he could sign another contract in Pittsburgh? Because next year is his age 39 season. And like I mentioned, year 20 in the National Hockey League. Do you think he signs another one? And if he does, obviously he's going to take a pay cut. He went from 9.5 to 6.1 a year after putting up over a point per game. If this pattern repeats itself in 2025-6, I think he would know that, hey, I need to take a little bit less, even though the salary cap is going to be substantially higher after next season.
Yeah, I would still say he would have to take a pay cut regardless, just because
he's not going to be a second line center if he comes back. He might not be a second line center next year. So he certainly wouldn't when in year 40 or, his age 40 season in year 21.
Yeah, it would be a tough call. Like I said, depends on where the team is too. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to kick him out the door by any means, but at the same time, if this team believes they can do well and can have success, oof, man, he'd be a tough one to suck up a roster spot almost if he's not proving he can perform to at least a percentage of what he has been. Because I've already kind of badmouthed his season this year, and I looked at the numbers again and went, wow, the eye test isn't great, but the assist numbers at least aren't bad. There is still some usefulness to his game, but something about that age and that eye test isn't helpful.
Yeah, a lot of people have, danced on his grave in the past, though, and I understand that was the past, and he wasn't 38 years old. He didn't accrue as many injuries as he's accrued. Obviously, he had the 2 healthy years the last 2 seasons, but this year now he's had 2 separate injuries since the beginning of the 2025 calendar year. But he has had a few of those, and you've kind of coined this term, the I am comeback doors. He's had a few. I mean, he missed the back half of the 2020-21 season and then the front half of the 2021-22 season. Everybody said, well, is he going to have anything left in the tank? Well, he comes out, he scores 42 points in 41 games, including 20 goals. So that's a 40-goal pace at the end of the 2021-22 season, earned himself another contract in Pittsburgh, and then put up 83 points in 82 games played to start that contract. So is there a chance that he's able to do it at 39? I mean, he did it at 36, but I understand a lot has changed since then. Maybe that move to wing gives him a little bit of a burst. Maybe that, slight drop in responsibility gives him a little bit more to give in the offensive zone, and maybe playing with, I'm just throwing names out there, but a Trevor Zegras would reinvigorate his offensive numbers, would reinvigorate specifically his goal totals. So I don't know. I think that when it comes to whether or not he'll sign another contract, I think I'd still be surprised if it did happen because his numbers have fallen off. But at the same time, the Penguins aren't winning anything this year. They're unlikely to turn it around to win something next year. If Evgeni Malkin and the Penguins organization look like the following year is the year, that at very least they're going to be back in the playoffs and they're going to be able to make some noise because they have built up this young core group. I wouldn't be surprised if Malkin's like, I want to be a part of that. Like in any way, shape, or form, I want to be a part of one last run with the Pittsburgh Penguins. And that was part of Rob Rossi's piece yesterday too. He said Nikita's never seen, at least has never been old enough to see us go on a run in the playoffs in Pittsburgh. And that's something that he wants to see. So if the Penguins are bad this year, which they are, if the Penguins don't make the playoffs again next year, but they look like they're trending in the right direction, I wouldn't be surprised if he said, just give me one more year. Give me one more chance to ride it into the playoffs with Sid and the Penguins and ride off into the sunset after a hopefully championship, but more than likely after a semi-successful playoff run, which is what you can maybe expect in the 2026-27 season. So I wouldn't rule it out, but like I said, I would still be very surprised if he signed that next contract and played at the age of 40.
That would be too. I'd be stunned, honestly, because I remember over the summer, we wrote something on Breakaway on SI about him discussing post-NHL plans. Found the quote. It wasn't necessarily him committing to Russia at all. It was just more of he says he has 2 more years left in Pittsburgh, and we'll have to see what his health is and what the situation is by then. So there was no full commitment to Russia back then. Mm-hmm. Clearly, it sounds like there isn't a full commitment now, aside from maybe a game. So it'll be interesting to see. And I know his frenemy, I think, as Yoey or
Rossi wrote it yesterday.
Rossi coined it as Ovechkin's planning on, I think, doing a whole season in Moscow after he, breaks the record and finishes up his NHL career. But for Malkin, it's a bit different, I think, because he did plant so many seeds in America and in Pittsburgh, and he does want to just be a Penguin forever. And he's always been the one that's the most vocal about this situation and where the team is in a blunt fashion. So I'd say, if this team is building something by then, maybe you give him the 1 year, the 1 year farewell tour, essentially like Fleury's getting, where he didn't have a deal coming into the season, but he knew he wanted to make this his last. Throw him a couple of bucks, sit him on. Fleury's a backup this season. Throw him on a third line, on a wing or something, and just play out the year. I could see that happening too. So we'll see. Again, this is one of those situations that we'll see what the team looks like. We'll see what his skill level is and what his health is. Let's be honest here. Yeah, he had 2 straight healthy seasons, but we knew that wasn't going to last forever. So we'll see what his health is, what the skill level is at, where the team is, and then cross that bridge when we get to it. For now, I just don't expect it. But at the same time, wouldn't be surprised. Very roundabout answer of saying whatever happens, I'm not shocked by.
The one thing we can do for sure, and the one thing that I am excited that he said this because of, you can stop the Evgeni Malkin to Dallas rumors. You can stop the Evgeni Malkin to wherever rumors because he's not playing for another team. He has a full no movement clause. The Penguins have no interest in moving him. And now, as we heard from the horse's mouth yesterday, he has no interest in playing anywhere else. Let's close off this episode with a little discussion about what's left this season for the Pittsburgh Penguins, because they got 25 games remaining. The playoffs are likely out of the conversation. You never want to say never with Sidney Crosby and Evgeni Malkin and that entire cast of characters, but likely out of the conversation. In fact, moneypuck.com has their chances at 3.4%, which is always fun to look at. And so you're telling me there's a chance, or what? I would say no, but there's a little chance there. So with that in mind, wanted to come on here and with the last 25 games on deck with, the Four Nations Championship later this evening and then getting back into Penguins hockey, which Penguins are must watch to you this spring? Who are you keeping your eye on? Who are you most excited to see over this last 25 game stretch?
Well, Sidney Crosby's an easy answer.
Yeah.
We'll see how he returns following, let's be honest, that wrist injury that we're kind of expecting might be hampering him a bit even in this tournament. Following that, you could say Rickard Rakell to see what he can bring to the table ahead of the trade deadline, and if he's going to continue building his trade stock afterwards, that's a key to keep an eye on. And when it comes to that, suddenly I'm looking into the AHL and saying, which ones of these guys are going to be must watch for the rest of the season?
Mm-hmm.
And there's quite a few names down there, whether it is at the AHL level or the NHL level. I think, Rutger McGroarty, Tristan Brose jump out right away as guys that you're looking to for the future. Same with Vasily Ponomarev and Ville Koivunen. And whether they make the jump to the NHL on a bit more of a regular basis this time around.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of where my eyes draw to right away. Same with Owen Pickering if they decide to bring him back up at some point, but seems unlikely with a sudden glutton of defense on the NHL roster. It's a short list, but it is more than nobody. Like I said before we started this, I came up with a couple of names there. And just because Crosby's an easy answer.
Yeah.
And really, at this point, the Penguins looking to the future. So keeping an eye on the AHL kids is important as well.
Yeah, Crosby is the free space on the proverbial bingo board for the Pittsburgh Penguins for the rest of the season for obvious reasons, because, of course, you're going to want to watch Sidney Crosby because everything he does is must watch. And secondly, because he's got some history to tend to. Point per game record is still very much in his hands, tied right now with Wayne Gretzky for the most point per game seasons in NHL history with 19. He has 58 points in 55 games this year, which means he is 22 points away from securing that point per game season in his 20th NHL year. So yeah, you're following along with Crosby for that reason and many others. And I had simply the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins, even if they don't come up to the NHL level. I'm watching the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins this spring because they're actually in a playoff race and they have all those exciting young names that you mentioned that even if we don't see them in these next 25 games at the NHL level, a lot of them are going to have a great opportunity come this fall to make the team out of camp. McGroarty made it last year out of camp, and a year in the AHL, a year of growth, you'd have to imagine he's going to be probably leader in the clubhouse for one of those roster spots. So I'm watching not even Pittsburgh Penguins hockey, but Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins hockey as they gear up for the Calder Cup playoffs and hopefully go on a little bit of a better run than they did last year when they lost in 3 games to the Lehigh Valley Phantoms. But I have 2 names that are currently on the NHL roster that I'll throw at you too. Joel Blomqvist is going to be an interesting name because since everything happened with Tristan Jarry, Alex Nedeljkovic has taken over. And I think that is putting it lightly. He has been excellent since that happened. Blomqvist, his future is kind of up for grabs right now because the Penguins' future in net itself is up for grabs, both in the short term and in the long-term future. We all obviously are excited about Sergei Murashov, but that's a little ways away. Blomqvist can kind of plant his flag in the Penguins' crease in these next 25 games because we all expect that Nedeljkovic is not going to stay as red hot as he has, which means Blomqvist is going to get more and more opportunities. Now, he's been impressive at times. He's been very impressive at times. But there's also been times where you've looked at him and you said, okay, he's still a rookie goalie. He still has to, sharpen some of those edges. He struggled a bit in third period specifically, and he's lost 3 straight games since that recall and everything happened with Tristan Jarry. So I'm looking for him to come out of this break, kind of regain his footing, and start to build a little bit more consistency at the NHL level. And then the other name I'll mention here is Phil Tomasino, because he's in a very, very interesting position with his organization. They've obviously spoken very glowingly about his performance since coming over from the Nashville Predators, but he's been up and down. There's been stretches where he's been really good, and you should say, oh, he should be in the top 6. And there's been stretches where you're saying, all right, he's kind of been invisible here for the past week or so. 5 of his 7 goals are game-winning goals, so when he scores, it's in big moments, but it still feels like he's playing for a contract and for a spot, because as of right now, he's not the only mid-20s guy that the Penguins like. They like what they've seen out of Cody Glass. They've liked what they've gotten out of a guy like Blake Lizotte. So those guys are going to be kind of leaders in the clubhouse for roster spots as well. But after a year where they all played in the AHL, the names you mentioned are coming up hot on his tail. So if he doesn't impress in the next 25 games, there's a likely chance the Penguins say it was worth a shot. He looked good at points, but we're not going to sign him when we know Ville Koivunen is ready to go and seems to have a brighter future. So this 25 games is very important for Tomasino and Blomqvist, as well as everybody else we've mentioned.
Yeah, you're totally right about that. And I think when it comes to Blomqvist specifically, because you're discussing him for the rest of this season at the NHL level, likely, but then he'll probably join the AHL squad that you're discussing in a playoff race. I don't want to get in the weeds in the whole situation of the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins getting to the playoffs and Tristan Jarry maybe being there. I mean, technically, he's there now playing games. I think he could play in the playoffs, but
yeah, he's on the roster. He can play in the playoffs.
Yeah, because it's not like they sent him down the day or the week before the AHL playoffs started. They're just trying to win a Calder Cup. But I don't know if the Penguins would do that though. That's just a side note. I don't know if the Penguins would be like, yeah, Tristan Jarry, you're staying there for the AHL playoff run.
I mean, we'll find out that answer pretty soon, I would imagine, because to be eligible for the AHL playoffs, you have to be at the very least on the roster by the trade deadline. So if they do a quick, they did the paper move over break. It wasn't even a paper move. They brought Jarry up, sent Blomqvist down so he could play, and then the second NHL play resumed, they switched him again. Unless they do that again, I mean, Blomqvist might not be eligible for the AHL playoffs, but it would be Tristan Jarry who is.
I knew there was something that
there's a determining factor at some point before the playoffs. Yeah. It's still to come.
But that's coming up quickly.
16 days, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see. I think that's going to be a fascinating thing to keep an eye on. Because I do assume eventually Blomqvist will become the goalie for the AHL playoffs, because we know the Penguins aren't making it this year, unless Blomqvist is the reason this team gets red hot somehow. Doubtful though. So yeah, I could see Blomqvist becoming the AHL goalie. Maybe that's when Jarry gets his next stint at the NHL, is shortly after the trade deadline, and gets the old let's give it one more college try. But that'll be interesting to keep an eye on. And yeah, it's the Blomqvist part is key. Tomasino, if he doesn't perform well, package him in with a Rickard Rakell trade. Let's get it moving this offseason.
I mean, I believe he's going to be a restricted free agent, so you could trade his rights. Yep. So there's a little bit of trade value there. And for a rebuilding team, you have to look at everybody in the same light, except for a handful of Penguins that I think we've mentioned plenty of times that we don't need to go down the list. But those are who we're keeping an eye on. Let us know in the comment section who you're keeping an eye on for the Penguins' final 25 games. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this one. Remember, you can find us on YouTube at Tip of the Ice-Burgh, or you can catch us anywhere you get your podcast from. We'll see you guys next time.